Call this meeting to order at 3:30 on the 22nd of March. We're going to go ahead and, Art, will you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, please. On your feet, remove your headgear, please. Face the flag at the door. Place your right hand over your heart and follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as you all know, we are obviously, yes, we'll go ahead and take all comment cards here. You can continue to bring them forth. We are gathered for a special meeting, specifically to discuss amendments to the Ballard School District's parental rights policy. We will today be discussing only that, so any comment is welcome but should pertain to that agenda item, and certainly any other public comment not relative to that agenda item is welcome at our regularly scheduled meetings. I would just like to start by saying that I appreciate that everyone was here. I do deeply apologize that I was not able to be here Wednesday. I realize a lot of people have put a lot of time, thought, consideration into what we're going to discuss today, and I appreciate that, and I do apologize for not being able to be here last week. With that, we are going to
just item number 5.
And then Tracy,
Okay.
I just want to interject, I've been numbering them as I receive them, so if you just put the comment card on the bottom.
You have it on the bottom.
And then someone
Okay.
just went to get the timer. I forgot.
So that's one, and then
There you go.
Okay, I see your numbers. Okay, perfect. All right, so right now we're going to go ahead and open item number 5, the discussion and decision to make any modification to the Parent Rights and Responsibilities Board policy. We are going to start by receiving background information from staff. That will include, we'll go ahead and let Pam start now by introducing the item to everybody who's maybe not familiar with what we're discussing, and provide a little backstory.
Hang on one second, the timer.
Okay.
So I just, with regard to we only have 2 agenda items, but with regard to the first agenda item, I just, the potential to potentially modify our parent rights policy. I've had lots of conversations with folks, and I just want to reiterate that we do have currently a parents' rights policy. So some people have asked about how come we don't have parent rights, and we do. We have a current policy, and so today is really just about whether or not we need or want to make modifications to that policy. I included in the board packet, I put it on the website so that you could add a parent's request, so that was helpful. But put the packet there so you could see our current policy, and then, and I just want to share that under that current policy, if you read it, then you know that and again, just want to make sure parents know, already you have the right to come observe in a classroom. It's within a reasonable amount of time, but you can come for sure. You have the right to inspect curriculum, any and all of it. So again, in a reasonable amount of time, but you do have that right already. You have the right to a parent conference. You have the right to talk to me, make an appointment with me and talk to me. You have the right to have a report card and a progress report. So all of those parent rights are given to you by the state of California. Those are laws that through the CSBA, which is the California State Board Association, they share with us that language so that we are following the laws that are given to you and to our students. And I don't know if you've been here for several meetings, but I do have a stack of binders this big full of board policies. So there are lots of them, and parent rights are part of them. There are some other policies that regard to parents' rights also. You also have the right to opt out of a few very particular things, and really there are just 4 of them. One of them is you have the right to opt out of sex education. You have the right to opt out of HIV prevention education. You have the right to opt out of any survey that asks your child about family life. So we have a climate survey that we do once a year, and that does ask about drugs and alcohol, and you have the right to not, and we just do it 4th, 5th, and 6th, though if you have younger kids, you might not have known that yet. And you have the right to opt out of the state testing. So those are the things that are protected again under those current policies, as that they are. Also in the meeting in February, Art had requested that I provide to the board all of the other Valley School policies. So I have given you all a copy of, and it was part of the board packet as well, all of the other Valley School policies that also mirror the language from CSBA as our current one does. So.
Thank you. Gina's gonna go ahead and read 3 letters.
I think Jenny was the
Or-
first.
Jenny, oh, yes, we have another staff presentation, I'm sorry. Jenny is going to go ahead and make a statement.
So the staff here at Ballard shares the belief with the board that the education of students is a shared responsibility. We recognize that parents are an important part of that responsibility and should be given the opportunity to be in a supportive and respectful partnership with the staff. The current parents' rights policy provides parents the opportunity to be a key player in the education of their child and children. Parents are encouraged to learn about instructional materials, classroom activities, and their child's academic performance. The policy also ensures that the relationship between school personnel and parents is based on support and respect. One area of concern that has been voiced throughout recent meetings is communication. The staff agrees that communication is a vital part of successful relationship between school and home. When discussing some of the proposed language suggested by parents, the majority of the staff is against supporting making changes to the parents' rights policy. Teachers support the belief that parents should have a thorough understanding of what is going on in their child's classroom. Most staff believe it is difficult to address communication effectiveness in a written board policy and believe it may be achieved by sitting down and discussing best practices instead of changing a policy. Many express concerns about the presented language. Most, if not all, of the suggested changes will put more work on teachers who already have a full plate. Teaching in a classroom is a dynamic job that requires us to plan for instruction yet be prepared and ready to change those plans from one minute to the next. This makes it difficult to share all materials and information about what is happening in a class before it occurs. While most teachers did not find it too much to ask to give parents notice of classroom visitors, there is concern about a 48-hour timeline and what exactly would be needed to be included in that communication, as well as what the end goal of that action would be. If you decide to make changes to the policy, we encourage you to consult with both parents and teachers to ensure that the policy continues to provide a supportive and respectful relationship between parents and staff, and that the language is accepted by all stakeholders. If you choose not to make changes, we understand that we can work on ensuring parents feel knowledgeable about what is occurring here on campus and welcomed as a key player in their child's education.
Thank you, Jenny.
Point of order, I don't think it's appropriate for us to applaud or make any approval or disapproval of our presentation, so if you'll hold your applause or any emotional reaction. Thank you.
And there were 3 letters to be read. Do I read them from here, or would you prefer I go there?
Gina's gonna read 3 letters from the community of people who are unable to be in attendance. And then we will move to public comment.
I'm reading 3 letters in the order that they were received. The first one is from Jennifer Kester. Dear board members, as a family of students currently attending Ballard School, we wish to express our very strong support for a parent's Bill of Rights that requires parents to be notified well in advance of classroom visitors, presentations, activities, and events during school hours prior to the scheduled date in order to provide sufficient time for parents to request that their children opt out of participation and or provide appropriate parental guidance in advance. Due to commitments that make it impossible for us to attend the March 15th, 2023 meeting, We collectively request that this letter of support be read aloud at the meeting and considered by the board prior to any vote on a modification of the above referenced Parents' Bill of Rights. Respectfully, Justin and Ashton Ellis, parents of I don't mention student names.
Don't mention names, please.
And Jennifer and Stephen Kester. The second letter is from Roseanne Crawford. Hi, Mrs. Rennick. Thank you for responding to my previous request in providing the legal counsel's communication regarding the recent incident. It seemed rather generic and subject to interpretation. The tensions around the situation continue to mount on campus and in the community. I appreciate you being available for the emergency parent meeting. As a concerned grandmother, I will not participate directly in the meeting. However, would appreciate if you would please share my letter with the parents and acknowledge that you have received this communication. After considerable thought and acknowledging everyone can make mistakes, the collateral damage has been such that I have some suggestions on some areas to discuss that I hope can be of help. It really does take a village, and we need your supportive leadership to move forward. Compassion takes effort, it takes focus, it takes commitment. Let's take a step back here to the incident in the 4th grade classroom. The handling of the situation was decided in a vacuum. In this case, a parent that is on the Board of Education, a parent that is PTA president, and the principal of the school, who is also the superintendent, all three in positions of power. Parents were not informed or prepared prior to or after the transgender announcement, and as such became an incident. To move beyond this, it must be acknowledged this decision made in a vacuum has impacted the whole class, the school, and the community. We must acknowledge the following: those adversely affected by this decision and the unintended consequences. The child themselves, openly known as their identity, was not protected in the way it was handled in the class announcement or in the Board of Education meeting. The teacher, who was not included in the decision, in fact wanted to pause to evaluate a path of action. Her authority usurped by the principal. The other students in the classroom were left in confusion due to a lack of preparation to process the situation. The parents of the children in the classroom, who were blindsided, had to try to find out from their children what had transpired, resulting in questions they were not prepared to handle. The California Healthy Kids Survey and AB 329 pertains to students aged 7 to 12 years, once in middle school and once in high school, covers comprehensive sexual health education and HIV protection. A parent has the right to opt out of this for religious reasons and is informed in advance. However, they cannot opt out of the materials that cover gender identity and expression or sexual orientation, discrimination, and bullying, Ed Code 51932B. Updating the Parents' Bill of Rights would be the first step in bringing confidence back to the school. However, a step further is needed if we are to find a silver lining in the incident. With this established, it's time to move from us and them to we as to how we move forward. All parents and teachers' rights must be respected to restore faith in the administrative judgment of the school. Is there a trained psychologist that is available to advise how to proceed that could have been consulted? If not from the district, can the Santa Barbara County Board of Education assist with a specialist to provide guidance with his case or any further case that may develop? While on the one hand, this was handled and can be viewed as insensitivity and clearly imposing on parents' rights, this is a child's and his family's cry for help. The suicide rate for transgender youth is alarmingly high. Although uncommon, transgender behavior can present prior to puberty before the educational component has been covered in secondary education. Can there be a protocol put in place for this type of sensitive situation? Dialogue must continue to ensure all family needs are met. The third letter to be read to the board is from Tyrone Smith. Please read my public comments at the board meeting today. Before you today is a policy that was passed unanimously by another school district in California, Orange County Department of Education. I think it is important to understand why a school district would feel the need to pass such a policy. According to the author of the Parent Bills of Rights, Jorge Valdez, he introduced the proposal because of several local instances of teachers going beyond their bounds as teachers. He also said, "I don't want anything I'm doing here to be interpreted as an assault on teachers. Nonetheless, it is clear to me that there's a small fraction of teachers, less than 1%, who are going well beyond what they should be teaching in the classrooms." He mentioned a high school teacher having an alternative queer library that the teacher made clear on social media that they were trying to hide from parents. He also personally observed objectionable classroom posters and condoms posted on walls. When passing the proposal, a fellow board member stated, "Parents need to understand what's going on in the classroom." There are other examples throughout the state where lawsuits and firings are happening because teachers and/or counselors either transitioned children without parental consent or chose not to lie to parents about their children's preferred pronouns. In Chico Unified, a mother has filed a lawsuit because a school counselor coaxed her daughter into adopting a male identity. The notion that kids have a privacy right against their parents, that's absurd and that's not rooted in constitutional law, stated the mother's attorney. Back to the proposed policy from Orange County. The reason that we struck out the line about being notified of their children's preferred use of gender pronouns was because, said Pam, she could not support the Orange County policies as written because she believes some may violate state law. When asked which ones, she wouldn't give specifics. I researched it and found that in 2014, California Department of Education issued guidance pertaining to new law AB 1266. We hastily struck out that line because we didn't want the whole policy to be disregarded because of one possible unlawful line. But there's a distinction between what the law says and what's in the guidance that the CDE put out. The law does not say that school staff cannot tell a child's parents what pronouns they prefer at school, but guidance put out by the CDE does. The highlighted clause, last sentence in section 1 of the proposed policy, was added to directly address the issue of non-faculty addressing our children while at school. Orange County allegedly less than 1% of rogue teachers, yet Ballard has 33% of board members and 100% of principals who violated their own legal letters claim that the California Education Code section 51101 gives parents the right to volunteer their time by providing instructional assistance in the classroom with the approval and supervision of the teacher. The approval was never received. The hiding behind the legal statement as if it was followed to a T has to stop. Students, teachers, and parents need solid protections from rogue teachers, administrators, board members, and parents alike. The other issues around the state may not have reached our little school district, but why not prevent them from ever being an issue? I urge the board to support amendments to the parent rights policies of Ballard School District to strengthen the controls parents can rely on. Tyrone Smith.
Thank you, Gina. We are going to move into public comment. I'll remind everybody that your comments are limited to 3 minutes. You should approach the podium and address the board with your comment. You are to keep in mind the protection and privacy of children, and there are to be no names mentioned. As Art stated earlier, hold any applause or discontent with what you're hearing, keep it to yourself, please. And let's,
Just add that to the bottom.
okay, thank you. Be respectful of one another and try to hear each other. We're gonna go ahead and start with Rebecca Smith.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Smith. Our board policies here at Ballard need to be amended to allow all parents the rights they deserve and to ensure full transparency within the classroom. Parents must be notified anytime a non-faculty member addresses our children. It's that simple. We need policies that protect not only our children and their families, but also our teachers. The extreme lack of judgment shown in the 4th grade classroom needs to be addressed, and amendments need to be made to our current policies. I find it pertinent to let you all know that 7 Ballard families are currently touring other schools and considering homeschooling. That is an alarming number in comparison to the size of our school. I would hope that the reaction from our board wouldn't be a simple good riddance in response. Let's foster a school that is inclusive and respectful of all people and their ideas. These are our children, and as parents, we deserve transparency. I ask that you restore the trust that parents have lost in our administration by considering these much-needed amendments to our current policies. We urge the board today to establish a committee to review the proposed modifications to the board's policies on parents' rights, and that this committee include parents advocating for the proposed modifications with open meetings that anyone may attend, and that the committee quickly work to find a consensus on the proposed modifications with all parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica White.
Good afternoon, board. When I reflect on the past several months and all that's transpired, I cannot help but consider what a privilege we have to be discussing issues like these. It tells me we're making progress as a society, and that progress should truly be noted and applauded. Any type of growth like this comes with pain and it comes with discomfort, and because of that, we should all give one another a little space and patience. I think there's a practical matter that our parents' rights policy hasn't been updated since 2011, where there hasn't been an opportunity to consider how these policies may be amended to reflect these changing times. I want our policies to protect the rights of members of our community, to provide more clarity that will in turn protect students, teachers, parents, staff, and all of us at Ballard. I think it's a healthy step for the school board to consider that the current policies are inadequate to deal with the circumstances such as these and our social progress. I think for this to be most effective, the school should consider expert opinion on these matters to make sure the rights of all members of society are protected as we continue to move forward. Additionally, I think time should be spent gathering input from parents, from the teachers, and from appropriate legal counsel. Included in the agenda packet are several policies that after review I find to be inadequate and inappropriate. And particularly the policy from Orange County contains language I feel to be highly concerning. As I considered my words today, after many conversations with friends and family, to try and consider multiple points of view, I think it's important to remind everyone that we are all part of the same family here at Ballard. During this process, I have met with individuals that do not share my views on social issues where we have worked towards common goals despite our significant differences. We all have to work through these uncomfortable issues and in conversation find the right solution that represent all of us. I encourage the members in my community to remain respectful and compassionate towards families. These topics are sensitive and they are personal to all of us. Let us be the model that others follow on how to embrace this change and create better policies moving forward. I urge the board to establish a committee to review the proposed modifications to the parents' rights. That committee should include parents advocating for the proposed modifications with open meetings that anyone may attend that can quickly find consensus on the changes. Should the committee determine that only minor modifications are needed, or even that none are needed, and we are adequately meeting the needs of our community to the best of our abilities, the effort to consider these changes is an important step in transparency. I do appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness on this matter, and I look forward to being part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Blair Storms.
Hello, my name is Blair and I currently have one student attending Ballard. My son is diagnosed with ASD and requires special circumstances within the classroom and learning environment, which requires me to be very involved in his education plan to ensure that he can keep up with his peers and standards for his grade. My son for the last year has struggled to use pronouns, proper pronouns, Mr., Mrs., he, her, his. I constantly need to remind him which proper pronoun to use. Have we even considered the impact this would have on special needs children? To cause even more confusion in an environment that is already hard for them to adjust to? Is one child's happiness worth more than a delayed child's ability to comprehend this type of situation? If this were to happen in my son's classroom and I was notified, with a reasonable amount of time beforehand. I would absolutely opt out of this conversation, explain it to my son using our personal beliefs as a foundation, only when I felt it was an appropriate time considering his delay. I strongly urge the board to consider the impact these decisions have on our special needs children as to avoid potential litigation exposure. Parents have the duty to protect their children's rights until they are old enough to make their own way in the world. The authority to make decisions concerning this infecting the care, welfare, and proper development of the child is known as parental responsibility. This responsibility and right was stripped from parents in this school when two parents in a position of great power, accompanied by our principal and superintendent, barge into a classroom without teacher and parent consent, convey a message that is very controversial. This is a gross abuse of power and shows the children that this subject is non-negotiable. They must abide by this pronoun even though the children were told they didn't have to use the pronoun, having 3 adults in positions of power to present it. It must have been interpreted that way. To be clear, this has nothing to do with this specific child identity. This has everything to do with rights. Does one child's right trump another if it fits a certain cause? What about parents? Does one parent's rights hold above another, especially when 1 or 2 of those parents hold positions of power? With this, I formally demand that board member Sean Conroy immediately resign for his abuse of power, and can only hope that he understands and sees how inappropriate and damaging his misconduct was. Also, a parent's policy needs to be adopted to preserve all parents' rights. I believe what makes this community and society beautiful is our ability to be different and then make the choice to accept one another or not. But when choice is removed, nothing but animosity and resentment arise. I am a part of a greater cause called the Coalition of Concerned Parents of Ballard School, and we urge the board today to adopt a clear and updated Parent Bill of Rights, allowing us to have control over our children's rights at all times, giving us the ability to opt out or in conversations and presentations that we deem appropriate for our child or children.
Thank you. I'm so sorry ahead of time. Maeda. It starts with a G. Thank you. It's beautiful and you say it better than I do.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Mada Garrett-Cachet, and I am here to talk about my parental rights in Ballard School. My family moved to Ballard a year ago from West LA. We came to love this town, school, and people in it, especially our 4th grade teacher who has been very helpful to us. I wanted to chime in on the incident on my son's classroom and understand it is an emotional topic. Our family has 4 nephews who went through these changes like the child whose parents showed up to my son's classroom. I understand they did from a fellow parent's perspective that it was the best way to protect their child. But I feel that by taking the approach they did, they disregarded every other parent of every other child in the classroom. It was explained to me that was done was within the law, but I feel that this would have all been a non-issue if this was brought up beforehand to include the respect all the parents. I believe that this would have been supported by the entire community and everyone would have felt more respected and included. That the principal of the school allowed this to be done covertly at the behest of parents who hold key board and PTA position. It makes me wonder what else is being done, said, and taught without my knowledge at Ballard Elementary, and if other non-school curriculum topics are being introduced to my child without my knowledge. My trust has been shaken. What I want today during this meeting is to add to the policy or charter or whatever you call it, more protection for all parents and teachers in Ballard School. To write down a policy or amendment, whatever you call it, here in Ballard. I want the parents' right to know and be able to choose to opt out on any topic that the Ballard School brings into my child's classroom. I am here today with a group of parents that I support and have an idea on what those policies are that I want added to the Ballard School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. William Murphy.
height. Can I raise it?
Step on it.
I'll hold it just like this. 3 minutes doing that. Sean Tracy Art, hi. Ballard has always followed a protocol of informing parents in advance of all classroom presentation by non-faculty. This protocol, to the best of my knowledge, is the standard operating procedure at all other schools in the county. This protocol was intentionally ignored recently, and that breach of conduct undermines a fundamental trust between the school and the parents. Occasionally ignoring school protocol is not the best way to handle future presentations. There are appropriate restrictions regarding communications from the school to protect a student's right to privacy regarding medical, handicap, and transgender issues. The student has a right not to discuss these issues with anyone, and by law, the school must and should respect that. There was concern that communicating to other parents in advance of a presentation on any of these topics to other children would violate this law. That is debatable. However, all agree that with the consent of the person who would like to speak, it is never illegal to inform parents that a presentation is scheduled, when it will occur, who is speaking, and the topic. And it is not illegal to require this consent and disclosure by policy in all circumstances. A policy on this issue, consistent with the existing protocol we currently use, would avoid a superintendent or teacher being pressured or persuaded to ignore the protocol in the future. It would also avoid exposing the school to legal jeopardy when the school selectively ignores precedent protocols. No one has a right to speak to our children in the classroom. Not a parent, not our sheriff, not our governor. If a person does not consent to disclosing details of their intended communication to the parents of those children, then that person should not be allowed to present to the children. Furthermore, no one should be allowed in the classroom without the teacher's explicit invitation and under that teacher's direct supervision. This requirement was circumvented recently, and our school policies must be amended to ensure it is not circumvented again. Recent events have highlighted that we need to update our policies on these issues and a few other issues, including bullying and school safety. The revised list of proposed policies is only a dozen sentences which augment and complement the several pages of existing school policy. I'll finish in a second. We have an opportunity and the responsibility to work together now to improve our policies. We urge the board to establish a committee to review the proposed modifications to the board's policies on parents' rights. That this committee include a member of the board, our superintendent Pam, one of our esteemed teachers, and some of the parents advocating for proposed modification. And that committee work quickly to find consensus in the proposed modifications with all parties, with open meetings that anyone can attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Moon?
I would like to volunteer to be on the ad hoc parental rights policy committee that should include parents, staff, teachers, superintendent, and one board member. I think this is a nice compromise before board policy is adopted for the Ballard Board of Education. That our school community has an opportunity, like William said, to provide input, and of course, it is legally reviewed before adoption. This is a casual meeting that is inclusive and gives everyone a voice to speak. This is our children. I am a mother of a 4th grader. I have supported this child my whole life. I've been fighting for civil liberties, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's for gay rights. That's not what the issue is. The issue is when we walk into classrooms without parents' consent, we send a message that those parents are in charge, and the parents are not in charge. This is a public school. We need to feel like you guys reflect our values. The board reflects the community. And I also think if you want us to get your child's pronouns right, that a board member, which Sean did, should not call me a name. He told me I was unhinged. I'm having a problem with this child, and we will address it later. But today, I want to make it clear, I support social issues, but you have to give parents agency, and the teacher, that's a sacred place. So just give the parents a heads up. Look at your community, look how we're reacting. Please take sensitivity and don't do this to us again. Don't ambush and then be upset that we're upset. You guys misrepresented the cause, and I'm disappointed.
Thank you. Jen Bolden?
Afternoon, board. A lot of my sentiments and comments were actually already handled by Monica, so I'm not going to read what I had prepared. But I did just want to presence that it is an honor to be in this community and to even be having this discussion. And I just want to give credit to the fact that we're all just humans trying to do our best in a brave new world. And I think you're all doing an amazing job in a really hard situation. And I think that this world being so on its axis and tilted and feeling out of control on a national and even planetary level, it's like this is our safe haven. This is our safe haven. And I understand that there's going to be differences, and we could have done things differently. But everybody has 2020 when it's in a rearview mirror. I want to come together as a community and learn. I want for us to hold sacred the place that if we work together, we will be better, and not to be divisive like the rest of the nation is. I can't take it. It's just, this is our safe haven. And when something like this turns into something kind of political, we have a different spirit, a different energy, and then possibly too dramatic of outcomes from the, now what forevermore our teachers are going to have extra burdens on them when they already work so hard. And again, not saying anything was handled perfectly. We all know we can't handle anything perfectly every single day. This is a new thing. Not here to give an opinion or to say what was wrong or what was right. And I do know that I trust you, and I do know I trust my community to come up with something that will feel safe and structured going forward for a very new situation. I just want to be careful that we don't overreact and let our emotions take control. And I am also cognizant I'm in a public school, and I want to be here, but that means I don't get to make every single decision. I trust you, and I trust that this community can come together and that we can kind of maintain our safe space of living in Ballard. This school alone boosts the real estate value, and there's a reason. It's amazing. I just don't want to forget that what was here is to help a child feel comfortable, confident, and more at peace with himself. And what we're doing, I feel like, is taking it in a entirely different, unintentional direction. It was never an agenda to push anybody's views. It was a simple black and white announcement. Was it handled perfectly? No. But it's the intent, and the intent was good on everybody's part. I just want to acknowledge that and to ask that we don't overreact, because I think once we can all take a breath, we can all say we're here for a reason, and that is to come together as a community and continue being one of the most amazing schools in all of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Lehman?
I don't get raised.
Hi, thank you all for being here tonight and having this conversation. I have something I want to read and just a few things to say. As you all heard the last time, I've been both a parent and a teacher, and I know how tricky that can be when you're trying to juggle those things that happen on the same school site that your children attend. I would like to just start by saying I find it very hard to believe that the teacher was not included in this discussion. Rumors tend to start when people who don't have firsthand information start spreading ideas that maybe aren't backed up by fact. It would be helpful if people can take time to gather facts before making accusations. My understanding and my experience is that both the teacher and the principal need to be in alignment regarding any guest that comes into a classroom. A teacher is typically part of a discussion, and then to make an unfounded claim that the teacher was not part of that decision process seems reckless and uninformed. Ultimately, I both trust and respect all the teachers at Ballard's judgment and believe they have all the children's best interests in mind. While that approval may not be written every single time a parent comes in, I understand it is Ballard's standard of practice. And I would like to also say that I agree that inclusive and respectful discussions should be had about this. However, I feel that the current parents' right policy that was presented, not the one that the school already has, but the one that was presented tonight, does not necessarily reflect all parents. I think the idea of having a committee perhaps to look at the current policies and discuss ideas seems fair. I do, however, request that the people chosen or selected to be on that committee be reflective of all parents, not just a small group of 7 who perhaps have different opinions from maybe the bulk of the school. I find tonight's discussion interesting because in my experience here at Ballard and in my experience as a teacher and my observations of what happens here at school, I do trust wholeheartedly what is going on in the classrooms. So to now reflect all the things that have been said tonight about the staff and principal / superintendent, are those opinions based solely on one incident, or have there been problems in the past that maybe haven't been brought up? But this seems like a large jump to make based on one particular incident. I'll stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes public comment. I am going to take a minute to review the newly presented proposal, gather my thoughts, and we will proceed then with any board comment unless anybody is willing or wanting to dive into that. But if you just bear with me 1 minute.
This isn't on.
Right, correct. It's not that I was able to review it. We were all able to review it earlier in the day. I just wanted to look at it again. I'll go ahead and jump off with a few thoughts. Again, I want to offer my apologies for not being able to be at the meeting last week. I was able to view a video recording of the meeting. So I just want everybody to know that they've been heard and seen. There has been quite a bit of communication, email meetings, which were open to communication with teachers. And again, I was able to view that video, so I am even aware of public comment and opinions that were presented last week as well. And I know these gentlemen were here in person to be a part of that. The first thought that I've had, is that I want to go ahead and ensure to everybody in the room that the teachers here at Ballard work in a very safe and secure workspace where their opinions are heard and respected, and where they have open communication with their leadership, and where they have open communication with the board, where they are represented by a union. They have a union president who is a spokesperson on their behalf. She spoke this afternoon. It is not necessary for parents to speak or represent the words, thoughts, or feelings of the teacher. The teachers are quite capable of doing that themselves. And in my experience, they do it quite effectively. And it's encouraged. And they are different. And they are varied. And they are diverse in their approach in the classrooms. They don't all agree on everything. But they have a voice within their administration and here in their workspace. And I am quite confident that we have the very best teachers in the Valley. And part of being a great teacher and being great at your job is being able to speak up to your fellow coworkers if you are unhappy or dissatisfied with something. And I assure you that all are encouraged to do so. So, while much has been said about the teacher's viewpoint in this circumstance, I assure you, she or he has open communication to present their opinion. So I just want everybody to feel confident that, again, that it is a safe workspace for our teachers, and that they do maintain control and direction in their classroom, and historically have carried out that responsibility quite phenomenally and without issue, for the most part, that I'm aware of in my history here at Ballard, which precedes my time on the board. I've been a parent here for a long time. So, is everybody perfect all the time? No. None of us are. But, again, historically, the teachers have been able to conduct their classroom activities quite effectively and without concern. One last statement on that, they may opt to speak in public, or they may opt not to. They may opt just to express themselves in the privacy of a staff meeting or a one-on-one with their principal superintendent. It's not really all of our business, but I assure you, those lines of communication are open, and it is a safe workspace for them. Of course, sitting on the board comes with the responsibility of listening to the people in the community, particularly the community of people whom the school serves. So I have tried to look at this issue of our parental rights policy from a number of directions. I have thought about it extensively in a vacuum, sort of assuming or setting aside any events that have happened in the last couple of weeks, presuming none of that happened, and just imagining that we're sitting here reviewing board policy, which I will admit, too much time has gone by that we hadn't. And we are going to take measures to correct that. And we've been speaking of it actually in concurrence with this entire events leading up to this moment. I certainly partially take responsibility for that. I've been on this board for a while. It's one of those things that updates filter down, and our policies need to continually be updated with what is being filtered down from the state, and of course we have the right to look at them as an individual school body and amend where we think necessary to tailor to our school within the bounds of the law. So we are going to do that, and it's a big undertaking, and that is the next item on our agenda, so I will get to further on that later. But back to this specific parental rights policy, again, if I can view it without any of the backstory, but this is sort of what I've come to. I'm not sure that the entire community of parents understand how extensive their rights actually are, as granted by the state. They're quite comprehensive, and if you review them in detail, you have the right to a lot of things that go on in schools and in classrooms. So these rights are in place. It's not as though we're completely rogue up here, school operating without any parental rights whatsoever. There are very clear opt-outs that are established, again, by higher bodies that say you can opt out of sex education, you can opt out of HIV protection education, you can opt out of family life surveys, you can opt out of state testing. These particular issues have been argued, again, woodpecker? These issues have been argued at a higher level, and so that's what exists. And now we're looking at, do we need basically to add language into our policy that further extends the rights of parents to be notified, essentially, of anybody entering the classroom that is non-staff. It is my opinion that, and it is concerning and worrying to me, that diminishes the ability of teachers to do their job. I am concerned that we have had one moment that has brought us to this conversation that admittedly one element of the conversation possibly could have been handled differently. Will we learn from that? Yes. Is rewriting our board policy necessary, or is that an overcorrection to one moment in time, not a history of complaints on this issue? Or the conduct in our classrooms, or the agendas of our teachers, or everybody, the teachers on this campus, the staff have been functioning in such a way that this hasn't been called into question before. So here we are at a moment, and again, I fear making an overcorrection in an entire board policy to compensate for this one moment. And I say that, and that is not, I do not want to disregard any of the sentiments or the thoughts or comments that have been put forth, because they are worthy. When something happens that is cause for alarm for some people, is it appropriate to have conversation? Yes. Is it appropriate to open it up for discussion as we've done? Yes. Does it mean in that instance that it's appropriate to rewrite policy? At this point in time, I am not comfortable with that. We also, again, looking at this in a vacuum, we're consistent with the other Valley schools. Most of the state of California, these policies have been deemed by lots of other people, including our neighbors, to be adequate. I do recognize that there has been an example brought forth from the Orange County Board of Ed, though, and I took time to look into that and see what was the impetus of their rewriting of their policy and who exactly does that affect, because when you hear the Orange County Board of Ed, I thought to myself, well, my gracious, that is a lot of people. That's has to be a ginormous school system. But in fact, this policy that was brought forth, the Orange County Board of Ed, really, that policy and that board only has jurisdiction over a pretty small, as I understand it, a pretty small group, a juvenile hall system in a small community school, which I believe is much like a charter. So it is not that the entirety of Orange County is now being ruled or governed under this policy. So I just wanted to make that clarification. I think that adding the language of that has been proposed handcuffs our teachers. And that is really where I come down on this. They've been entrusted to do a job. They are experts in their field. Many of them have their masters in education. I am confident that they know much more about conducting a classroom than I do. And it is my belief that if you make it increasingly difficult for these people to do their job, they won't do it as well. So if we put in place policy that requires that every person that comes into the classroom that the parents have the right to opt out or opt in, or I don't think we'll have classroom visitors. I don't think our kids will go on field trips. I don't think our kids will get to go to Sacramento. I don't think that the teachers will continue to look outside of the box for creative ways to enhance our children's education and bring cool and interesting things into the classroom. There is an anagram or there's something I learned a long time ago. Fear. Future events already ruined. And I am afraid that by reacting, by changing board policy at this point, the mountains of fantastic things that happen in our classrooms will go away, and we will limit the abilities, again, of the teachers to do their job. And that's sad to me, and that is not what is in the best interest of our children, and it is not historically what has made this school special. And I want to preserve that. The other thing, so that's sort of where I look at the policy in a vacuum. The other thing is that I cannot entirely look at this circumstance in a vacuum. The moment that has brought us to this conversation was simply that. It was a moment, just a moment. It was I don't even know that it was an announcement. It was a statement. The sky is blue, the grass is green, my name is blank. I'm not that person. That statement happened on that day. It likely could have happened on that day or any day in the previous 5 years on this campus. What I'm trying to say is you can't control the day, date, time, or manner in which this statement, or whom, for that matter, was going to make the statement, including the child themselves. So, back to fear. The statement was coming. And that's it. There are things that are just protected. We don't have the right to, if someone's special needs enters or becomes a member of our child's class, you do not have the right to be forewarned of that. That is not lawful. That person has protections. So we have to understand the bounds which we're operating under and the world that we're in. So the impetus for this policy, based on conversation and based on the last previous meetings, is rooted I think, in bias, and there have been some unkind things said and some sentiments brought forth that are disheartening to me, and I don't care where you stand on the issue. I am a part of this community, obviously. It's a small town. I know there's rumors out there. It's not good stuff, and it's damaging the fabric of the school. And I'd hope that we could all mature past that and put an end to the rumors, because I think we've established factually what happened in the classroom. I also want to say that because someone sits on a board or volunteers themselves in a position at the school, they do not abdicate their role as a parent. So showing support for one's child, no matter your position, even if you're a teacher on campus and your child is here, you do not abdicate your role as their parent. And just as I showed up earlier to the DARE graduation to support my daughter in her having completed that program, it is not inappropriate that a board member show up to support their child. There was no agenda put forth. There was the simplicity of a statement made. And parents in place to support that statement at the knowledge of both the teacher and superintendent. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys say what you think.
What I'm hearing from the group that presented today is that we need to get an ad hoc committee to look at the Ballard School District's board policy on parental rights. That's what I heard, at least from half of the presenters. Whether or not the Orange County draft is a template isn't of concern. What's concern is we need to get a teacher, the superintendent, one of the board members, and some parents to get this ruptured cohesiveness of a school put back together. And to do that, we just can't stay on top of the fence trying to figure out what we're gonna do. We need to get the committee together. We have a couple of readings we have to do. We have to get it authorized by the CSBA policy attorneys or an attorney of our own choice. But I don't see this issue being resolved unless the public, the parents, are heard and get a response from us as a board to deal with a policy that may need no changing at all, but needs input as presented. Again, a teacher, the superintendent, at least one board member, and probably more than one parent, maybe an odd number of parents. And we need to get that going soon, or the issue will just be bounced back and forth until we have something concrete that assures everybody that incidents like this are handled in a way that no one feels left out or feels like their opinion was not addressed. It doesn't matter which side of the issue you're on, we just have to come up with a policy that everybody here wants to see in their hands that's been openly discussed and arranged. And so today, somehow or ever, it would be nice to get this ad hoc committee formed. And whether or not anything happens with the policy is entirely up to those individuals. And that's the only opinion I have.
And Art, I echo your sentiment. Clearly, what we've heard from most people today, that some form of committee to discuss this, to collaborate with this, with the different stakeholders involved, that makes sense, I think. I'm not so sure if we've formed that committee today, but that's not for me to say, but I do think that, there's enough voices out there that support that, and I do think that's a good idea. I think everybody wants to move forward from this. It's nauseating how long this is going on. I think this is kind of a bridge that most people could feel comfortable with going forward. And there was also a comment about legal opinion, and that might be something that could be part of that too. And ultimately, I'm not saying that a committee ultimately makes the decision. That might still be, may or may not be that case, but certainly that should be something that we progress with, in my opinion.
So, I think I mentioned in there that, back to the fact that our board policies are somewhat outdated, and I said I would circle back on that when we got to discussion item B. But, based on what you guys are saying, our policies have to be brought up to speed. If you look ahead into item B, we have talked about and researched the possibility of doing it with Gamut. I think that a committee to review not only the parental rights policy in singularly as, you know, this one item under a microscope, but I think that it would not be out of the question to, again, because these things haven't been looked at in a long time, and we know that it is going to require, as we've discussed at meetings prior, a lot of work for us to get up to speed. So I think that the first step in reviewing our board policies is to contract with Gamut. Again, we'll vote on that when we get to discussion item B. But once our policies are cleaned up and up to date with Gamut, which will bring us up to speed with everything that is brought down from the state, language and whatnot, that needs updating, I think that then a committee can be formed to look at maybe the policies as a whole and ensure that they are appropriate to our school and our school community. I would welcome that. I think that right now, forming a committee today to examine this one piece of paper, we've been examining this in isolation for a while, and I think we need to get the entire policy brought up to speed, and then have the opportunity to receive input not only on the parental rights policies, but any others that some would want to discuss. So, again, that's sort of tempering on item B down there, but that's kind of where I land on that. I am going to go ahead and take the question.
I'm just curious if there's a time estimate on what that Gamut program would take to get everything up to speed?
In letter B, we will address that. So, is there anything else?
No, although I don't think the focus of the board policy is gonna have anything really to do with the Orange County. I think that was just presented as a template, but we're not gonna get wrapped around the axle looking at this. We're gonna look at what we have already.
Sure.
Art, can I ask a question?
I can
Yeah.
Ad hoc,
Ad hoc, yes?
are not all the parents allowed to be
Oh,
involved?
on the committee, all the parents, that'd be a little bit cumbersome.
Right.
That if you want something to be accomplished in a timely fashion, you're gonna wanna have a set boundary on the number of people that are working on it, but it can be done in public.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that all
If
voices
that's,
are heard.
it can be, there's a public way to do it, but the actual committee members should be designated and refined. Even though every parent may wanna volunteer, I don't think it's a sensible way, but the the president of our board will be able to direct that.
Okay, thank you.
So
Can I ask
to,
a question? Sorry. So I understand that these two issues are intermingled, and that sounds very reasonable, that we should be approaching them in the correct order. What I wonder is, it takes time to develop an ad hoc committee. Could these things happen in tandem? So we develop the committee and the committee starts work when the policy's updated.
I would recommend that today we look at item A, vote to take action or not on whether at this moment in time we wish to change the language in our parental rights policy. And then I'd recommend that we look at action item B, take action or not to contract with Gamut to bring our policies up to date. And then at the next board meeting, vote to approve a committee once we have more information from our deadlines from Gamut. I mean, I feel like it's a little presumptuous of information right now to create a committee, and again, there are a select few of us here in this room, and so we're not going to create a committee today. But certainly can. I just want to make sure we go about it appropriately in a way that's inclusive to the entire school community. And I don't think we can accomplish that today.
I agree with that. I do believe a committee should be created. I think today is too soon, or not enough time to really reflect on all the components of it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought that that we were doing this committee so that we could then vote. We would take the time to have a conversation, then we could vote on action A about parental rights.
They
So-
haven't
In
even,
lieu of.
but they haven't even updated the policy yet.
So the three of us, at a moment, will hold a vote. Art did express his opinion, which was to form an ad hoc committee today, and the three of us will vote to determine if that's going to be how we proceed or not.
Well, the discussion item is to vote if policy should be changed.
Today, what's on the table is, will the current verbiage in our parental policy be amended? And
We're not, so, I mean, there's no, I don't think there's any expectation that we know what the amendment is. But the idea is that, will it be amended, or will it remain the same? How it will be amended is for a later time.
correct. And today, based on information presented, conversation had, the previous school board meetings, today's special meeting, I would like to make a motion that we not amend the language in our current board policy, parental rights policy, that we continue to function under the policy as written, until which time we've been able to consult with Gamut, legal services, our teaching staff, and interested community members. Today, I do not recommend that we change the language in our parental rights policy. That's a lot of words.
To clarify, you're saying in those groups, the last part was that a committee be considered as part of that process when we work with Gamut, or once we go update things through Gamut,
Yes.
and then, okay. So I would second that motion.
All in favor?
Right?
Aye.
Opposed. I'm not sure I even want to rely on Gamut. I don't know that much about Gamut. Do we have a contract with Gamut?
In your board packet, it's 2 pages, just what they sent to me as their proposal for,
Is
As
Gamut-
we're moving on to discussion item B, actually, Pam, will you
Yeah.
go ahead and give us some information on,
I would like to say before that, though, that I would like some direction from the board about, and I'm assuming that's the 3 of you or Tracy to give me direction on how to form that committee. So I don't know if that
Yeah.
needs to go out to, is it the parents vote people in? Like, I don't, if we say 3, I don't wanna be selecting those 3 folks is what I think.
no, certainly, and again, I don't think that we're prepared today to make that decision.
Okay.
It's a new idea presented today, a good idea, a thoughtful idea, but one that needs thought, so.
Okay, so looking at the Gamut, policy, so Gamut is is a company that does come into school districts, and they've come into prior school districts that have been in, and they provide, they work through CSBA, and they provide, all of the updated language that is filtered down through assembly bills, and like, also then these are the policies that need to get changed. So they would come into our school, they look at our policies that have mostly not been updated since 2010, and they would update the language based on a few filters. Like, we're not a Title I school, so these things don't apply. We're a single school district, so these things don't apply. So they sort of help us filter through. It would be a process with myself and Emily, because she has some experience with that, to just get the language updated. They aren't approved at that point. It would just be the most current updated policies according to CSBA, which is the state's governing body that helps make sure that everybody keeps up to date with the assembly bills and the laws. So then we would know that the policies that we would be presenting would be up to date as far as legal language goes. But then we would have the opportunity to look at them and say, and we could make, changes to any of the policies as the board sees fit, or if there's a committee, as the committee, we could propose changes to the basic language. But I think what you're saying is that to update the Gamut policies first, so that they're at least current, so that we aren't accidentally updating a policy that's not lawful.
Discussing something that's not even relevant.
So we have the most updated policies, and I think as time sensitive we can be. When I talk to Gamut, it requires a 3-day workshop effectively. So my time for 3 solid days, they come, they travel here, they're in person, and so they would sit with us, and we would exit that 3-day workshop with updated board policies. So I don't know what happens in those 3 days. That's a lot of printing and a lot of reading, but that is what I believe. So in 3 days' time, we would have the most updated policies. And then the other part of Gamut, what you have in front of you, is that we currently don't have ours on our website. So the other piece of this is that for the money that we would spend with them, they would also then work with Simply, I believe the company's called, that would make a link on our website so that all of our board policies would be available to anybody online. And then 4 times a year, they send a quarterly update, and they say, these are all the laws that have changed, so these are the policies that are affected, and they give them to you already redlined, and you can say, update, and if the board approves them, we want to update, then ours are automatically updated in our website and in our policy book. So it would sort of automate our process so that we stay current, rather than letting 13 years go by.
And it's my understanding that it basically then, that is literally bringing us up to date with the most generic form of policies that are
Correct. They
Okay.
would be the most generic form. They would be lawful because they already go through
lawful.
CSBA, but they wouldn't necessarily be, specific to Ballard at that point. So then that would be incumbent upon us or the board to decide if there are some, I will give an example of our interdistrict transfer policy. I don't think that, that's a policy that we might want to have separate from considering our history, so then any policy we change from CSBA really should go through the attorney. And make sure, and then they sort of redline them, so that becomes a process. And just for everybody's information, to change board policies, it does require, you come with proposed language, that's the first step, then it has to go through a first read, it has to come to a second board meeting for a second read, so there would be opportunity for additional parent input through that process also. But if we do this with Gamut, it's going to be what they call a global adoption, because we would update all of our policies. I would be able to tell you which ones are not changing at all, which ones are significantly different, but I don't think one board meeting, 1 month is gonna be enough. I think when you get the big binder of all the changes, it's gonna take some time from the board to really digest all of that. Or potentially the committee, if the committee is formed, it will be a lot of work for a group of folks to look through all of that. I think it's important work, but I think it will take some, a little bit of time and a little bit of, I think a lot of work and a little bit of time.
What is the cost?
Yeah.
I put it in there, the cost, it's not cheap.
You can't do it by yourself, Art.
I know we can't do it ourselves.
I'm sorry.
The entire, the workshop itself is $8,200, that's the 3 days. And then the policy manual review is another $1,250. And then it would cost us $2,080 a year for the subscription that keeps both our policies online, it hosts them online, and it sends us the quarterly updates that are sort of redlined and ready to go. So that $2,000 a year keeps us current. So it's gonna cost roughly, if I do the math right, $9,500 for us to get it to the point where, one time, and then $2,000 a year to keep them updated.
And
We had an original quote that was it different?
Yes, the original quote I had was for $12,000, so this is a little less, but it's still significant.
And it mentions different, if you've got 3 school, or was it 3 districts?
Right, so when I went to the superintendent meeting yesterday, I just asked if anybody else was like in a position that they were wanting to do this same work. I did, from the Valley schools, I did not get any takers, and because they come in person, I could invite like a Santa Barbara school to come to us, but they would have to travel to us because Gamut is coming to us. So, but I can at least look into that. I go to the county superintendent meetings also, so I could ask if anybody else, because that could reduce the price.
Because that would take it down.
But when we're trying to do it in a timely manner, it would require somebody else to sort of be ready like we are. I don't wanna wait, somebody say, yeah, we're gonna do it next year. I don't wanna wait a whole year to do this, so that's a little.
In other circumstances, larger schools, for instance, and I know that we have talked about the fact that Emily worked on this during her time at Solving School, are there essentially people that are staffed in larger school situations that it becomes their responsibility then to monthly update?
It still happens
policy.
Quarterly, but yes,
Quarterly.
it is, even if we do this with Gamut and we spend the $2,000 a year, it's still a cumbersome process that has to happen, and somebody has to sort of keep tabs on it, because it still requires any change we make has to do the first reading and the second reading, and what changes did we make and were they updated properly, and so it is a process even after the workshop. We'd be in much better shape even if we just did the workshop and got that far, we'd be in much better shape than we are now. But I do think it will require a sort of continuous upkeep, and if that's Emily or myself, if Emily does attend the workshop, I would like to give her a stipend to do that, because we talked about before, sort of, it's above the pay grade that she gets for the work she does as the office clerk, so this, the Gamut's charging us a lot of money for it. I think there needs to be maybe, we can talk about it later, binder, but I think maybe a stand for those 3 days, but that's, I don't know if that's part of this conversation.
Well, I guess my question is the alt for other districts or other schools, the alt to contracting yearly with Gamut, which I understand that does include the online hosting of the policy. The alt is that
We could create
They
a Google
have-
Doc and we could do it ourselves and try to get them up online. I just don't know that they would stay as current as it, because it requires a person then to make sure the Gamut policy, the way it happens here, it is a little more automated, so it would, I think it would happen more easily, but we could host them ourselves online through Google Docs, but I think I shared with you those 4 big binders. It's the policy is 0000 through 9000, so it's not, it would take us a while to create that document to get all of our and again, if we worked with Gamut for the workshop and we just got them updated, then we could host them ourselves on our website. We have, the bandwidth to do that, but I do think the quarterly updates is helpful, frankly, for somebody else to sift through the law and say, these are the board policies that are affected.
Do we have any of the COVID short-term funding vehicles that are gonna go away at some point, that could be applied towards
Yes.
this as a cost? Because we're gonna lose some money anyway, right?
We will, based on our budget talk from last month, there are some COVID funds I think that we could apply towards this. I can't think off the top of my head which exact category that could be, but I think because a lot of the policies are related to COVID, frankly, that there would be a case for us to be able to say that we're updating our policies because we're not up to, our COVID policies are not updated. So I think that would allow us to use COVID funds to do the updating.
I just think it's at least interesting if those funds will disappear if we don't use some of them.
Right, we have to use those funds and we're working hard at using them, but yes.
And this is a timely thing,
right.
it might be a good use of those funds that will
Right.
expire.
Yeah, I think the $2,000 will outlive our, like the annual subscription will outlive our COVID funds, cause it will be something we would keep up with,
Yeah.
forever. So that part not from COVID funds
Yeah.
necessarily, but the other pieces, I think the initial, workshop, the Gamut workshop, we could pay for out of COVID funds.
There's a question from
Oh.
the
Not speaking to the annual payments, but if the money's free and it's COVID money that's going to get lost anyway, it does seem like it would be a useful process to understand what precedent is out there on other policies. But the word generic policies was used, and I was wondering if you're going to use this service and we can use it as a one-time opportunity to update things, can we specifically share with them the types of policies that parents have raised here and say, is there any precedent regarding those policies? It's not the generic policies that are in the educational code that our policies are verbatim copied from, that we need to check and see if the educational code has changed. It's have 15 different schools already published something on this that we can find comfort in and say, well, that was a clever way to deal with it. So in their database, can we share with them the 12 bullet points that have been shared and say, is there anything in the database that they have information about, as opposed to this is the generic, no changes taken from state law or federal law? That again would be very helpful information for all to take some guidance from other people that have already thought through this issue.
I don't know that Gamut would be able to do that for us because they really work exclusively through CSBA, which is the California board that does do sort of the language that we know aligns to the California law, but I don't think anything would keep us from selecting some of the policies or earmarking a few to say, these are the ones we're gonna ballardize, and then we would need to send those to our attorney to make sure they were sound.
So that's
right?
an attorney issue,
And
not a
certain-
Gamut issue of review.
Yes.
And again, I do want to, just in past experience, there have been, again, the interdistrict transfer policy comes first to mind because that is most specific to our school and our situation, and it has changed over the last few years, and when it does, again, you know, there is a procedure by which to do so. Plenty of meetings preceded, a ton of research to also look at schools, for example, our district size, how they maintain their numbers, what the risks are of not maintaining numbers, how they achieve how they come about their transfers. Is it by lottery? Is it by, so there's a lot of research that goes into all of the things that you're suggesting, basically, which is how do other people address this circumstance, and then pass through legal to say, are we operating, again, within the binds of the law in an effort to, you know, make this policy specific and workable for our school. So that is why I think it's imperative to bring the entire, I mean, there's, again, there's a lot in there that we need to review and approve, but does not need to be necessarily sifted with a fine-tooth comb that is, safe to say, functional for a public school in California. So I think we need to get to that level, and then I think we can look at the specific policies that, you know, to use your word, ballardize the
Sorry.
specific
That's
the
probably not a good
specific
word. It
policies
sounds
that
almost not appropriate, but,
that are
I
tailored to
will
our
also
school.
say, just for your information, that taking any of those policies through another process, which again, there will be a few policies that I think that's appropriate, that's my opinion, but I wouldn't wanna do that for too many, because it is expensive also to run it through the attorney system, right?
Yes.
Because then,
Yes.
so we just have to be careful that we're not necessarily taking 40 of our policies and trying to do this alternate process with them. And I guess unless the board feels like there are some that need to be earmarked and looked at more carefully, but I don't, that part can be expensive as well, so we just need to be careful.
So I will, again, you know, I've been here for a while. I apologize that this is the circumstance that we're facing. The flip side of that is we've not had this conversation because things have been going quite well. So the policies that are in place have,
Insufficient.
they've been doing a good job.
Yeah, right.
So they are not, again, that we don't need to review them, but I'm just saying we haven't gotten to this point without updating our policies because we've been fraught with controversy or a not well-run
And there
school.
will be a large majority of those policies that haven't changed even through CSBA
Right.
for 13 years
A
themselves, so
decade.
even
Sure.
though, and I will say, if you look at the policies from the other schools, theirs are as out of date as ours are, frankly.
Yeah.
So some of them were from 2008, one of them was from 2005, so we're not alone in our being behind the curve. I just think that it would be, I know Solving School, for instance, just did contract with Gamut themselves, and they are working on their policies right now, so it is a process.
It's a chore.
So do we need to entertain a motion to fund or contract with Gamut to do this before we even form a committee? Do you need a motion to spend that money?
Well,
Or is
yes, and that is,
B,
yes.
okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we contract with Gamut to bring our board policies up to date.
I'll second that motion with the preface that we know what the limits of that cost will be, even if we want to customize it. So in other words, not just to hire them and then get a bill for some unknown amount. I think we should have a ceiling on the amount they're going to charge us.
I think to do the basic, that is a quote that we have in the
Okay,
thing, so it is
what
an
is that
actual
amount?
quote.
Because I'm going to put that in the motion.
Okay, I have to do them there.
And just, I know how attorney fees can be presented one way, and then when you need to pay it to get the final product,
Do you want me to include the annual subscriptions as well?
Yeah, for how many years?
It's just annual.
As long as
Okay.
we continue to vote for it.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
So the annual total would be, the 2,580, and this one, I'm gonna also make sure I'm doing that right. 9,450 for the workshop and the manual review.
So the total would be 11.
Well, the total, this is a
Okay.
one-time fee, and then this is an annual fee.
Okay, so then I'll second the motion if you want to include up to $10,000 for fees and the $2,000 for the annual subscription for this year.
So 9,700 upfront.
9,450 upfront.
Plus there's a site fee of 250,
Right.
that's right.
Where's the
Yeah,
site
I'm
fee?
sorry to interrupt, but they also said to, put in the travel cost.
Oh.
Oh, that's
So
right,
there was travel
sorry.
costs and hotels for 3 days too, so I just wanna make sure the board's aware of that.
Thank you.
also.
At the earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So maybe we need to say up to
Should-
12,000, maybe
Yeah,
we
I
need to
can't
say up
imagine
to
it's more than
$12,000 then.
Yeah.
For the one-time fee, up to $12,000 and
Okay.
up to 3,000 for the annual subscription. I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we contract with Gamut to bring our board policies up to speed, that we host the policies through Gamut on the school website. We will do this at a cost of no more than $12,000 in an upfront fee. Is that the number you said? And $3,000 per year going forward, and we will vote yearly to continue that relationship with Gamut and their hosting of our
Okay, I'll second the
policies.
motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At the next meeting, following our conversation with Gamut, I'm certain that we will have more information about the timeline of how this will happen. And that is just information that we don't have right now. So, I just wanna reiterate that I appreciate that everybody has put time and thought into this and can come and can speak and be heard, and I look forward to cleaning up our laundry and getting our policies in place, and look forward to community members working together to make sure that Ballard is well represented in our policies, and that the spirit of that is what's best for everybody on campus, the teachers, students, parents, community alike. William?
At the next board meeting, I understand that you're not taking an action item now, possibly because it's not actionable the way that it's written in the agenda right now. There's more to either approve or not approve changes. For the next upcoming board meeting, what's the process, or can we request right now that that be an actionable item, so that if you do deem as a board at the next meeting that you want to set up an ad hoc committee, as we've been discussing, that you have the opportunity to do so, and that it's on your actionable agenda for the next board meeting?
I agree. And I would add that it would be helpful as part of the public to understand the process of how that ad hoc committee is
Mhm.
developed, because I know that there's specific policies. I'm not aware of them, and it would be nice to know what the timeline of that is gonna be as we work to finalize these policies.
Nor am I at the moment, which is why I really hesitate to say anything, but I do understand that, people would like to see this happen in a timely manner, and there are some restraints based on what information we're gonna get, but we are going to gather information and sort out exactly what that will look like. And I can't guarantee at the moment that the formation of a committee will happen at the next meeting, because I can't guarantee right now a date at which Gamut will be able to work with us on our policy, but we're working toward that.
I respect you can't guarantee it. Can we have it as an agenda item so that you have the option
For further
of considering
discussion.
it at the next board meeting?
Certainly.
Thank you.
And I'll work on the timeline and, I guess, how, I'm just looking for direction, how ad hoc committees are formed and what would be equitable.
We're gonna have to have a lot of conversation and research, because I don't know.
Okay.
I don't even know what direction
Unprecedented.
to give you at the moment. We'll look into it. Okay. With that, I'd say our next regular scheduled board meeting is on Wednesday, April 19th, here at 3:30. Go out, be kind, have fun. It's a community of diverse people and diverse opinions. We all function in this one relatively small but beautiful space. And we should really work hard to respect one another. I have some of my, we'd be foolish to think that we would all agree on everything all the time, so, let's just listen to one another and be kind. And that makes us the envy of the valley. And that's what makes our school great, and it is what has been most disheartening about what has transpired in the last couple of weeks. Yes?
I just have a question only because I'm not aware. Why can the board meetings not be streamed or
Right.
online? Because I know there's several people, myself included, like my husband had to come home early from work today to watch my kids. There's people sick, there's people that have work until 5, 4, 6. So I'm just curious, like, even if they're not allowed to chime in, why can we not stream it so that they can at least be a part of it? Because I know there are a lot of parents who want that. So I just would like clarification on why that is not allowed.
So there's an organizational meeting that happens, it's every December, at which point, the board decides what's a convenient meeting space and time that will be consistent so that the community knows what to expect. Historically over the years, we've met in the evenings, we've met 3:30, at 5:30, at 4:30, at 7:30, you know. That meeting is always open to public comment and input. We seek it. Tends not to be a very exciting agenda item, so not a lot of people show up to tell us how they feel about meeting space and meeting time. It is, at the end of the day, dependent on the schedule of the board members. But certainly we all would invite anybody's input on that.
Okay, I get the time, but why, sorry, if we have the capability of this cameraman,
Right.
So our district is not funding this lovely gentleman that's here.
okay, but we have iPads and computers that are funded through the school,
And we
correct?
can fund you, we can fund Gamut, we can fund this gentleman.
So she's asking why can't we live stream this?
Zoom it.
And we were doing Zoom for a really long time. I was actually a part of Zoom last year on one of the board meetings. Why can't
So-
it be live streamed?
I don't know that it can't be,
Okay, so
to be
can
honest.
that be something
That
that
is,
I think we
brought
should,
up?
why
That is-
put that on an action item for maybe the next board meeting, is ensuring that all parents have access to these meetings, whether or not they are able to be here in person or not.
we can look into that.
So that's live streaming.
And how soon are these videos posted?
Again, this is a private citizen doing this video work.
The
and
next day?
So,
1 or 2 days? Okay.
not even aware of where to get it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
YouTube.
Okay.
On YouTube.
Thank you, private citizen.
All right, our meeting is adjourned at 5:21.
Yeah, that's right.
I found a PTA.
Yeah.